Hello, my name is Harrington Watko, and we're back. Now, right before we took the break, I sort of introduced to you the second half, which the topic is going to be investment or expense. Now, let me take you through this before I expound on it. We've got $25 billion no, na pumapasok po sa bayan natin. Ang tawag dyan sa mga OFW based on the traditional banks and financial institutions. But we also have the underground, or the other sources that come in and out, being how resourceful the Filipino is. But nevertheless, let's assume that just $25 billion is what's coming in. What's happened is based on the perception of these OFWs, or better yet, the perception of the banks and whatnot. The OFWs are beginning to buy into what they call it investments. So nakikita po natin the non-stop construction in the building of all these condominiums left and right. You don't only notice this in just the high-rises, but even in the low house development units and developers all over the country. Ang nangyayari, they are making investments, and the banks and the developers are going crazy. We have what we call a building boom, most especially here in Metro Manila. But yet, maglakad po kayo sa gabi. No? I do this. I walk around at night sometimes, and I look up to all these buildings, and it's pitch black. There are only so few lights, or where people begin to live, or they move into these condominiums or their houses. In my village alone, I've noticed the vacancy rate. Ang ibig sabihin po niyan, vacancy, walang umuupa. Ang ibig sabihin niyan, pag walang umuupa, it's either masyado mataas ang parenta or talagang hindi kaya talaga, period. Walang umuupa. If the vacancy rate is very high and you make an investment towards a house or a condominium unit, what does that tell you? Is it still an investment? Can you say, pare, nag-invest ako sa condominium eh. Nag-invest ako sa bahay sa Bel Air. Now, if you're going to move in with your family, and you call this an investment, definitely, there's nothing wrong with that. But, if you're making an investment, like your second house, third, or whatever, tapos sasabihin mo, ano yan? Walang umuupa, walang kumukuha. What happens? Di ba expense po yan? Ladies and gentlemen, to help us understand these issues, because this is a priority. This is a current event. It's happening all around us. There's so many buildings and developments coming up all around, most especially in the metropolitan areas. We have with us an investment analyst. We have Romel Sangalang. Hi, Romel. Thank you very much for being on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Romel, 3 weeks ago when we had you, you were explaining to us basically the concept and the theories and an analysis of the mortgage industry and what's happening. I remember it took me a while to sort of absorb all the points you gave up, and now I'm seeing it for myself after our short conversation, the real true meaning of investment versus expense. I don't think a lot of people realize that. Your analysis to this is, an investment has to generate income.
Right.
A guaranteed, somewhat type guaranteed income that will not cost you monthly association dues, repairs, taxes, and then what you have is an empty investment. There's no such thing as an empty investment because it doesn't stay flat. It either depreciates or there are expenses. Correct me. Is that the way to explain that?
Yeah. So what you want is a good investment. To start with, let's look at what experts are good investments. Banks are great at being experts at good investments.
Supposedly, but not what they're offering.
Right. So
0.03 of 1%, not even 1%. On inflation alone, talo na pera mo in a bank. In other words, if you want to make sure that your money loses interest or its value, keep your money in the bank for 1 year. I guarantee you will lose the value of that, whatever you invested. Correct?
that is correct. So what I'm saying is it's good for them. It's not good for you.
It's not an investment.
No, it's good for them because they know how to take cheap money. You're providing them cheap money. You're only charging them less than 1% for them to take your money and find another investment vehicle where they can make a lot more. Right. The only reason I bring them up is because in the paper, and you'll see that on the 14th last Friday, BPI had announced that they were going to increase their home mortgage by 20+%. Now, no one makes that kind of decision unless it's indicative that that's how they make great profit.
That's right. Using cheap money.
Cheap money. Your cheap money.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And it's looking at the Metro Manila area and a couple of other places, seeing that OFWs and young professionals can now afford, especially these studios, just a room with a kitchen, a bedroom in the same place.
Small, but at least
Small.
it's his.
And it's theirs, right? Now, do I have any negative comments about that? Look, I always say buyer beware. Buyer beware, because there are things that you have to understand before you make such an investment, and that you would define it as good. So even in the loan itself, the amount, the hurdle that you would have to get through is around 30% for them to trust you. You're very young, you're a young professional. They're not going to trust you very much, so they want a lot of money up front.
So 30% of the cost of the unit.
30% of the cost of the unit. Then they're going to probably charge you points because, again, you're not very worthy of credit. Now, points is paying interest ahead from the first day you sign those papers, which is, it's a great feature set for profitability in a bank, charging points or charging interest rates up front. And then, of course, after that, you've paid your points, you're going to pay taxes, you're going to pay a mortgage that's amortized. That means most of the money you put, let's say you put 100, I'm just throwing out a number,
Yeah.
100,000 pesos a month.
Right.
Because you're a young professional, you're a director
Yeah.
of global operations.
Right, right.
100,000 pesos a month. The way that's amortized is that 80% of that is interest, right?
Interest first. That's normal, yes.
It's normal, right? So what I'm telling you is, if you're going to sell that unit within the next 2 to 3 years, all you've paid is interest.
Yes.
You've not really paid down your loan. So there's a lot of things that I'm telling you, you have to understand for you to even consider this a good investment.
So it's not an investment. Let's call that an expense.
Right.
No, because that's what it is.
Yes, it is.
Because you bought something, you think you bought a unit, you put out money up front, 30% of the cost of the project, and then out of the balance of the 70%, you're paying, at least for the first 3-4 years, interest up front. Your debt remains the same, the principal meaning the principal.
Yes.
Now, this is expense up front.
Yes.
Okay. Why do they call it an investment?
Well, in hopes that you're like your parents or maybe your grandparents who never moved anywhere. Back in the day, even before the 80s, people didn't move countries. People didn't move even states in the United States.
Even here.
Even they just liked where they grew up. That's where they're going to stay, and that's the end of the story. But we are in a global environment now. Our investments, our people, our family, this is not one of those societies that stay put. The reason I bring this up is because if you're not going to stay put, if you're not going to live in a place for a very long period of time, I would reassess what your definition of investment is. For instance, I'll give you another example. You gave 30%, right? And then you're paying 100,000 pesos per month for maybe a one-bedroom. But there's a 30% vacancy rate out there. You're telling me you can't find a nice 40,000 peso a month, one bedroom, somewhere in Metro Manila? I'm sure you can. In fact,
For half the price you can right
you
now.
might even get someone more desperate and bring it down to 30. I pay for a house
Yes.
28,000 pesos because I found someone that just wanted an American to live there. But my point, that difference, the delta between 30,000 and 100,000, that's 70,000 pesos a month. You could literally find something to invest in versus it just going into a property that you might not really get any advantage because you're going to live there a short time.
Romel, we Filipinos seem to have a problem. Today I opened the newspapers and immediately, regardless of the major daily that you choose, you will see a lot of ads about all these building developments all over and a lot of village developments, gated villages in the south and even in the north now. I mean, the ads on the newspapers are all about real estate. Now, when you approach, we Filipinos or the locals think, hey, when you buy something, it's an investment. When in reality, it is not an investment if it's going to cost us nonstop, right? Now, like you're saying, if you're going to move in it, well and good, that's okay, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Because you'll stay there 10 years, 15, 20 years. When does it become a real true investment? Let's say 10 years? And what should you get after a 10-year period? You were saying a certain percentage.
If you remove all the taxes that you've paid out, you removed all the repairs, you removed all the points, generally you're going to get 5 to 6% on a 10-year.
Out of a 10-year period.
And that's if you sold during a time that's normalized. What I mean is you weren't at the 2008, 2009 debacle where property went down 30, 40%. It's climbing back in the United States. In some places like Canada, it really didn't affect them.
It
Here,
did move, yes.
yeah. So, normalized position. 10 years later, normalized, you'll get 5 to 6%. If you removed all the taxes and et cetera that cost.
And you should be happy with that. And yet there are many who think, no, my property, for example, Ayala Alabang, everybody thinks for some reason that their values are over 50, 60,000 already. But who determines the value of these real estate developments? Aren't they just word of mouth by the broker? Isn't it always what the market can bear? It's not necessarily the last sale, because if Manny Pacquiao made the last sale, or Janet Lim Napoles made the last sale, you can hardly say that that's the value of the property now within the area. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
It's supposed to be the weighted average of all the sales within a given period. Let's assume a year.
Yes.
Then you can safely say that's the real value of the property.
Yes.
But when you have buildings simultaneously coming up, like the way we see it, that cannot be an investment, right?
Well, the tough part of that is you've got a small populace that can afford the specific units that you're talking about. And even that populace, many of them are overseas.
That's
So
right.
What does that mean to you? When you're selling that, again, the populace that can purchase your unit is very small. It doesn't matter that the guy next door bought it for, and he came from Hong Kong,
Right.
that he bought it for X millions of pesos. There's not very many people coming from Hong Kong.
That'll be buying it for the same rate.
For the same
So in
rate.
other words, should you need to liquidate, you won't be able to sell for what you think it, never mind what you think it should be, for at least the same amount of money you put out. Chances are you will not get it. So it's not an investment, is what we're saying. Let's go to your opportunity. You presented an opportunity which I was not able to magnify the last time you were here. You proposed a nice scheme.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Tell us about that.
You know, I'm always a proponent of real estate as part of a portfolio that balances your money so that when you retire at the very end, that you'll have both nice set of real estate, a nice set of bonds, a nice set of equity shares on big giant companies that are going to be
But
around
here
forever.
we don't vote in the stock market.
Yes.
I mean, we don't vote. We don't invest in stock markets. We don't want to put it in the bank because you're going to lose money. If you buy real estate, which is what we think is the only investment available, it loses money. We can't even liquidate when we need it. And the high cost, especially for condominiums, kills us on a monthly basis. And if you buy a second, third house, just the repairs and the maintenance, the association dues, plus the taxes, are irritably a non-stop occurrence, year in, year out. If I can get a tenant, I'd be happy. What if you can't?
Right.
So we can't call them investment. We call them expense.
Yeah.
What can you offer that's better?
Well, like I said, you know, BPI had stated they're going to increase their home mortgages by 20%. And why? Why is that? Because that's where they can actually make money. What we do...
And more suckers to buy in.
Well,
No, that's what it is.
It is taking a surge that the Filipinos are having, the OFWs, and taking advantage of that. But to make the long story simple, what our company does is put together people. Instead of a bank putting together a mortgage for a development, we put together people and take their money, consolidate it, and make a mortgage for them. And what it is they get that mortgage at an interest rate of 8% a year. That means everybody in that consolidated mortgage will be paid out 2% every quarter. And
So it's not just, you're guaranteeing an 8% return, and out of the 8%, every 3 months, we get paid back 2%
Yes.
of that 8.
yeah, you're not waiting
So I'm
3
not
years.
spending for more dues and
No.
taxes and whatnot.
Right, right. Yeah, you're actually getting your accumulated interest rate back every 3 months. Even though the development will take about 2.5, maybe even 2 years to build, in that 2-year time frame, you're actually getting your money back every 3 months. And that 2% really goes down to the very end point where the developer says, okay, I'm done with your money, we've already built the building, I'm going to give you the entire mortgage back, but we also do a profit projected, and what they make as far as profit, they report to us, and then we get a share. So they give anywhere, besides the 8% annual, when they give you back the entire mortgage, you'll get somewhere between 6 to 12% based on the profit they made building that building.
Let me try and explain. Ladies and gentlemen, explain ako po sa inyo. Tatagalo. Marunong naman Managalog naman si Romel. Pero lumaki sa Amerika. Ang pera mo, kung bibili ka dito sa investment ito, kesa bibili ka ng condominium o bibili ka ng bahay, sasabihin mo investment. Pero hindi naman investment yan kasi pag nag-invest ka sa bahay o sa condominium, kung gusto mo pa upa, walang uupa. Mataas nga vacancy eh. So, anong nangyayari? Nagbabayad ka ng association dues, nagbabayad ka ng taxes. Pag sa bahay man din, may maintenance ka. So, expense ka ng expense. 1 taon, 2 taon, kung may umupa man, baka bumaba pa ang paupa mo. Pag dito pumunta kayo kay Mr. Sanggalang, tsaka sa negosyo niya, ito ino-offer niya, no? 8% a year. Pero, kada 3 buwan, yung 8%, 2% nun, babayaran ka na. So, kanyari, naglagay ka ng 1 milyon na piso. So, every 3 months, tama, Ronald? Yes. Every 3 months, may 2% ka na. Every 3 months, 2%. So, nagiging 8%. Pero yung pinapasukan ng proyekto, pakikita nila sa'yo. Pero, you have to explain this part. Yung proyekto na yan, hindi sa Pilipinas ginagawa. Yan. Hindi gaya dito, mga bangko, kukunin ng pera mo, gagamitin nila, kasi mag-i-invest ka. Ganun naman tayo sa Pilipinas. Naglalagay tayo ng pera, dyan kukunin nila, gagamitin nila, lalagay nila sa mga development project dito, kaya tuloy-tuloy mga building ang tataas. Pero sino namimili? Kung meron man namimili, hindi kayo nalulugi namimili. Parang ganun po pala ang labanan yan. Now, you invest outside the country and specifically Canada. Why Canada?
Right. So again, in the beginning I said buyer beware. The reason I say buyer beware is because laws should protect consumers.
No, forget the laws and protection in this country. DTI is asleep and we have no consumer protection.
Right.
Let's go through that.
So the reason I propose Canada is because the laws there basically protect consumers that make an investment in the mortgage trade. So the developer is underneath the people who own the mortgage. What do I mean by that? So when we actually put together a mortgage against that development, the developer has the very least rights on anything that happens to that building. He has to follow through with everything he said he was going to do with that development.
Protected.
And the government of Canada basically protects you because you and Canadian names are registered at that development. Where now the developer is not the true owner of the development. It's actually the mortgage owners that are the true owners of the development.
All of us that invested in it.
That is right.
Because we are making a profit out of it. That's why it's an investment.
Yes.
And that's where the project goes, and it's secured somewhat.
Yes. The ones we always pick are bonded and secured. The actual developer understands in order for him to retain control, he has to pay out, and there's a date. So in one of our product lines, we have a development in Regina, Canada. It pays out August 2015. So August 15th, 2015, he will write back everybody, pay off the mortgage, give the projected profit share, and then now the development is his.
So imagine, so if it's 2.5 years, I'm guaranteed the return of my money, which is my money, and if it comes back to me, any 1 peso over and above that is an investment because it's a profit. Here, it's 8% per year. I'll get 16, and if it's 2.5 years plus 4%, correct?
Yeah.
20% in 2.5 years, and it comes in trickles of every 3 months. You don't have to wait for the whole period.
Correct.
What happens at the end of the period? So on the 20th month, tapos na. Ayoko naman ibalik yung pera ko. Pwede ba invest ulit natin? You have that, do you provide that facility?
Yes. So every time that we have the ability to turn around and show you 3 to 4 more projects, the ones that we recommend, the ones that we've picked out of hundreds and hundreds of projects in the area, we only pick 3 to 4 because, again, they're bonded, they're secured, the developer is trusted, has a long history of delivering on time. All these things have to be in place in order for us to say, this is the development we're going to recommend.
Don't you find it queer that here in the Philippines, the consumers with the excess funds, it's funny how we traditionally invest, because we really don't invest. We expend our monies. So it seems. Because going to the bank is a total loss. Going to the stock market, well, I don't know. I don't know anyone really who plays it here. And investing in condominiums and housing outside your own is more of, it's a bad move. It's a bad investment
Expensive.
move. Here.
Yes.
Unless the vacancies go down, what are the vacancy rates in Canada in these projects?
The projects that we have in Toronto, there's a 1% vacancy rate. That means
Grabe.
if there's 100 unit in that building, there's only 1 unit in that building that's up for rent.
Oh my God.
So this
So
is
the owner sits on top of it, and there's always takers. Always. There's always
takers.
takers.
Yes, usually it's a guy just moving for an upgrade. He's leaving. He's going to rent his place out, or
He's gonna do the same thing. Everyone's
He's
moving
buying.
around.
So that's the vacancy. I just want to say also the entrance is fairly inexpensive compared to the mortgage payment, down payment that you have to put together. Again, when you're a young professional, you have no credit line history, they're going to ask for 30% down.
In your case,
We're talking about millions and millions of
Yes.
pesos. The entrance for this particular program is 1 million peso.
imagine.
So 25,000 Canadian or 1 million peso gets you in and gets you 8%. Now, if 1 million peso can get you a down payment on a condominium here, great, but $25,000 on a unit that's worth 200,000, I don't think it's going to get you too far.
Okay, we're at the top of the hour, Rommel, and we're going to have to close the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, sana naintindihan nyo, kasi ako naiinis na ako kasi nakikita ako pagkausap ko mga realtor. Hindi, ganito na value niyan. Miski mga may-ari ng value. Wala ka naman tenant, hindi mo mapaupa. Gastos ka ng gastos. May condominium ka naman. Pero ano nakatira dyan? Daga. Wala nangyayari. Pero bayad ka ng bayad. Gano'n ang mangyayari po sa inyo. If you're interested, your numbers were on, right?
Yeah.
It was on. But just your number
Yeah.
to reach you?
If you want to reach me, call the office at 368-5781, 368-5781. It's Sugi Financial Services. We only do developments in Canada, and I'd love to talk to you about that.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, if you need more information, you can always email me, write me. That's harrytambuatco@gmail.com. Maraming salamat po. Until next week. Thank you, Rommel.
Thank you.
I like that question. You are what you watch.